All right, you could go.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Hero, and my group members are Janelle Daniel George, Mishka Garraway, and today our group would be presenting on Chapter 9 from the leadership textbook, Being in Communities. With that being said, let's get right into it. In order for us to understand a bit more about communities, I'd like to start us off with a brief example summary. So let's picture a scenario in which a committee member is absent from a meeting. Immediately, members of this meeting notice their absence and call to discover that they are sick. The sick committee member is called by their worried colleagues who ask if they are okay. To their surprise, the sick committee member sounds awful and is immediately noticed and understood by the members of the meeting. It is unexplained that they got sick last night and they did not call so that no one would worry. The members of the group understands and gestures their desire for them to get well soon. They also tell the sick committee member not to worry about anything, and that copies of the minutes/notes would be taken during the meeting and sent to them. So after reading that, we can say that this committee appears to be a healthy community, as their committee member's absence was noticed, and they cared enough to check on them and share the information discussed during the meeting. The sick committee member knows from this encounter that they are cared for. This action is small and costs the group very little to do. It's things like this which fosters communities. Community is a compelling feeling, whether on a small personal level or on a macro or national level. Remember all the times when communities pulled together in times of crisis. The families who opened their homes to strangers after the 2002 hurricanes, and the colleges that took in displaced students after Hurricane Katrina. It is these actions, be it a simple phone call to someone who is sick, or something larger, like the act of taking someone in during a time of crisis, that fosters communities. Uh, with that being said, can anyone give me a brief definition of what they think a community might be? Anyone? All right. I'll continue. It's very simple. A community is simply any group of people that come together for a purpose. Some examples would be this class, for instance. We are technically a community, one that came together for the purpose of covering this course and getting those precious credit hours done for our degrees. Some other noticeable examples would be any clubs or organizations you may be part of, or perhaps even an office you work at. Now, with that being said, why are communities important? They are important because they provide us with a sense of belonging, support, and identity. Moreover, being part of a healthy community can also provide us with support when we're going through a difficult time. It can be enormously helpful to have people who we can turn to. Community members can offer emotional support, practical help, and advice. They can help us to feel we aren't alone in our struggles. Think about all those times you were lost or confused about an assignment. Would you turn to a friend from your class for help? This is what community is all about. A community can also help us to develop a sense of identity. When we're part of a community, we learn about shared values and beliefs. We also learn about our history and culture. This can help us feel we have a place in the world and we are part of something more important. Communities also reduce stress and isolation. When we're part of a community, we have people we can talk to and connect with. This can help us feel less alone and therefore less stressed, as well as help us feel as we're part of something larger than ourselves. Research shows that people who are part of stronger communities tend to have lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol levels, and a lower risk of obesity. They're also more likely to exercise regularly and eat a healthy diet. This all, of course, results in, as mentioned before, a reduction in stress and isolation, which ultimately benefits our physical health in addition to our mental health. And lastly, communities provide us with a way to connect with others. Now, obviously, when we join a community, such as a club or organization, which potentially have people who share your values, you're able to meet more like-minded people, be it through support groups or volunteering. Even getting to know more about your neighbors and building relationships with them can provide a sense of belonging and reduce feelings of isolation. While finding a community can feel like a daunting task, it's well worth the effort as it provides a relief from the pain from the lack of connection, support, and experiences of isolation. With all that's been said, I would like to share a short video which shows this in action.
The word community sounds odd and a bit dispiriting. Some pretty negative images tend to come to mind. When we think about what other people are like, without quite realizing it, we draw on images fed to us by the media. And that's why we tend to think that most people are pretty violent, driven by success and fame, and not necessarily very pleasant. It breeds an urge to stay at home and make private life the center of things. We associate happiness with standing out from the crowd, with personal happiness, the nuclear family.
Are you guys not seeing the video when I full screen it? Hello?
No, I'm not seeing the video on my side.
Can you hear it when I full screen it?
Just hearing it alone, but not seeing anything.
All right, I'll just play it in this mode then. I'm sorry about that. Maybe if I zoom in, is that? No. All right.
The word community sounds odd and a bit dispiriting. Some pretty negative images tend to come to mind. When we think about what other people are like, without quite realizing it, we draw on images fed to us by the media. And that's why.
Y'all still not seeing the video?
No, we're not seeing it.
Okay.
It was playing fine before when you were testing it out, so you could leave it just like that.
Okay, I'm gonna share my full screen. Let me know if you see it now.
Yes.
The word community sounds odd and a bit dispiriting. Some pretty negative images tend to come to mind. When we think about what other people are like, without quite realizing it, we draw on images fed to us by the media. And that's why we tend to think that most people are pretty violent, driven by success and fame, and not necessarily very pleasant. It breeds an urge to stay at home and make private life the center of things. We associate happiness with standing out from the crowd, with personal happiness, the nuclear family, and business success. Community feels like it's for losers. The individual is king.
Still full of running, and here's Götze! It's Mario Götze! It's super!
But then there are some weird moments. A big sporting event, an election day, extreme weather like a big snowfall, and we might make a discovery as basic as it's absolutely crucial. Most people are very nice. They're interested in small things. They're mild and moderate. They're funny. They're kind. They want to help. Despite some surface differences, they're like you. A painfully exciting idea comes to mind. If we could more regularly generate communal moments, meet people, hang out in groups, we wouldn't have to imagine that the whole world was so competitive and so dangerous. We wouldn't have to be so guarded, closed off, suspicious. we wouldn't be so focused on our own love lives and all their issues. We've allowed our worldview to be kidnapped by the media, by narcissists and sociopaths. We've allowed our sense of what's normal to be shaped by newspapers and television stations that make money from creating imaginary communities of monsters and pointing out everything that's wrong and to be scared of. We've allowed the kinder elements to seem like they're the exceptions, when it's in fact the bad that's the exception. It's time to change. What happens on those special occasions is the truth. Other people aren't strange or so different. We can trust in community. Of course, we need some special occasions, some encouragement to come out of ourselves. We're still too shy. At the moment, we only know how to do it around sport or the odd other occasion. But we should more regularly come together and learn how to do so. We should ensure that the nicest buildings in every neighborhood are the community centers. There's a huge part of us that longs to live more collectively. It's hugely beneficial to be able to feel enthusiastic and committed to one's whole society, to feel reassured by membership of an admirable community. Collective pride takes the burden of self-regard off the individual ego. We don't have to do it all ourselves. We can belong to something better and sometimes greater than we are.
Okay, so given what we know about communities, what would an ideal community be? An ideal community would be one in which there is a common purpose, trust, acceptance of people's emotions, willingness to share, security through emotions, thoughts, and opinions without criticism, strong role models within the surrounding group, and the time for both fun and serious activities. So now I've given a rough idea of what an ideal community would be, I like to talk about what's more realistic. So in reality, an ideal community is a myth. It does not exist in reality and probably never will. This is not surprising, as communities are made up of people who may be meeting each other for the first time. And it should be noted that even close friends will still argue and disagree at times. In reality, we all live and work and learn in imperfect communities, which, if they are striving to be better, these communities become supportive environments for both individual and group growth. Now that we've discovered that perfect communities do not actually exist in practice, how do we live and work in our imperfect communities? Well, the answer appears to be relational leadership. Some of you may remember we covered relational leadership more in depth in earlier presentations, so I will be brief on my explanation on it with regards to communities. Relational leadership asks us to envision the context of the setting of working in a group as a healthy community, which leads to a whole paradigm of expectations and norms for working together effectively as participants in shared leadership. Essentially, a community cannot last if the members do not believe in its worth and approach communities with a calm attitude towards difficulties and potential disappointments. Especially because ideal communities do not exist. Relational leadership calls for those attending communities to do so as a discipline, where in this case, the word discipline means something to be studied and practiced, something to learn from. Given that, let's begin talking about the elements of a community. So traditionally, a community is described as a social group that not only shares an identity and structured pattern of interactions, but also a common geographic territory. It's not just a place where interaction occurs, but also where an attitude of connection and commitment that sustains relationships and purpose grows. Sharing that community commitment is the essence of relational leadership. Think back to the example scenario from the beginning. A simple phone call to a friend or coworker who is absent. because they are sick may not seem like it illustrates leadership on the surface. But imagine a small committee or class where the absence of one member is not only noticed, but a matter of concern. Because the members of that community look out for each other's needs, in this type of environment, each participant feels a sense of ownership and shared leadership. With that being said, the traditional definitions of community refer to effective communities that practice these 8 elements. And these elements are wholeness incorporating diversity, a shared culture, good internal communication, caring, trust, and teamwork, group maintenance and governance, participation and shared leadership tasks, development of young people or new members, and links with the outside world. Now, communities know they are a collection of individuals who accomplish their goals through trust and teamwork. This requires processes to make decisions, methods of communication, and a commitment to some level of participation by community members. Through working together, community members develop a shared culture that is concerned about new members, and as a result, effective communities realize they are not insular, but in constant dynamic interaction with their broader environments. Binding all of this together is the awareness that a group is a community. The shared culture may reflect the spirit of the community. This community spirit makes many other relational processes possible. Now, while that was a traditional view and definition of communities, many traditional views of communities are changing. Conventional views present communities as homogeneous groupings of people who have much in common and may even resemble each other in ideology, race, or class. Those may indeed be communities, yet cultural and ethnic diversity, as well as other forms of diversity, are necessary resources for building community. A true community cannot exist without diversity. Diversity of ideas, diversity of skills, diversity of experiences, and diversity of worldviews bring the many talents of people gathered as a community to achieving a group's shared goals. If all community members saw things the same way, had the same skills, and had the same life experiences, their ability to be resilient and face change would be limited. Coming back to that point earlier about relational leadership calling for us to approach community as a discipline, well, especially because we are all different, it should be noted that community is potentially the place where the person you least want to live with always lives. And when that person moves away, someone else arises to take his or her place. This is why we must approach communities as a discipline. Moreover, other traditional views have held that communities need face-to-face interaction, which is only possible through close geographic proximity. Increasingly, however, the term community also describes those with common identity and interaction, but without geographic proximity. References to the medical community or the spiritual community reflect their common frame or perspective, but not their physical daily interactions. Many members of these communities do find ways to meet and think together. Professional society meetings, through associations and conventions, provide a forum for the development of community connections. Now, given that communities do not necessarily require geographic proximity for interaction, how do they interact? Well, it might be obvious to most of you. Cyber communities, which form with the help of electronic networks. These networks have provided a creative way for communities of common interest to interact. Internet chat rooms, blogs, message boards, online discussion groups, and sites such as myspace.com, Reddit, and even the plethora of messaging apps like WhatsApp and Discord are linking people across the globe into selective communities in which minded people meet. There are those, however, who express concern that electronic communications, like the ones mentioned before, could diminish community. Indeed, it is possible to become isolated from face-to-face interaction when using the computer for most of your interactions. But the effective and responsible use of electronic communication can facilitate community. Think of how you feel closer to the community of your secondary school friends when you can text message them from wherever they may be now, like at other colleges, at work, or even in other countries. Cyber communities have provided support connections for everyone, even niche groups of people, such as gay or lesbian students or students with disabilities. Although many remain cautious of internet relationships, studies demonstrate that offline and online relationships do not differ in depth or breadth and may even be associated with social well-being. You can also find that identity and feel a sense of community with others without interacting. For example, if you're an avid environmentalist, you feel a close connection to the struggles of the Greenpeace or the Syria Club when you read about them in the news. If you're concerned about poverty, you feel a sense of community watching the worldwide AIDS-style concerts attempting to influence the G8 summit. If you participate in community service, you're concerned about the abused children, you feel anguish over the latest tragedies reported on the radio and can empathize with social workers struggling to find solutions. If you are a member of a national organization like a Serenity group, you may feel immediate kinship with a sister from another chapter whom you met while you're both on vacation. You might even seek out communities when you move to a new location because you know you'll be welcomed as a new member. As human beings, we all want meaningful connections to others, settings that are inclusive and empowering, in which there is purposeful change being accomplished through ethical and collaborative processes. These are the epitome of effective communities. Relational leadership flourishes in settings that value the elements of community. And with that, I'd like to hand you all off to my group member, Mishka Garraway.
Okay, good afternoon all. How is everybody feeling tonight? Is everybody okay? Now, I would be presenting on the topic, a command center. Next slide, please.
Excuse, something is going on with the screen. I don't know if anybody has experience in it.
Yes, I'm seeing it as well.
What's going on?
It's just a bit, it's glitching. You're seeing still, but just a little glitch. So a command center involves the conveying of a vision. It involves engaging persons, managing capabilities, and to achieve results. Okay. All this is responsibility based on the leader. The leader is responsible for gathering persons who can specialize in different areas, all right, or just to be part of a community. Next. So command center refers to shared vision, purpose, or values as a force to unify persons for an organization. It's like a focal point. Next. So a command center in leadership involves a shared purpose. Individuals can work towards a common goal by being inspired and motivated by a shared guiding principle. This can be articulated by the leaders who have a compelling vision, aspiration, and values. Number two, assignment of values. By aligning values, individuals collaborate effectively, uphold ethical standards, and decisions are being made, based on shared principles. Leaders must ensure that principles are understood and embraced by individuals. A collaborative Sorry. Clear communication is also important under the command center, right? Collaborative decision making. It involves team members being involved in making decisions. Each member's contribution should be valued and contributes to the final decision being made. All right, it is important to establish a command center by having clear communications. Building trust and cohesion. Building trust and cohesion is very good for fostering open dialogue, trust maintenance alignment around a common center. Building trust and cohesion overcomes challenges together. Next. On to community of practice. Communities of practice is a group of persons who share similar interests, profession, and expertise, and can come together to learn and exchange knowledge they share, best practices, and solve problems. Communities of practice can serve purposes such as knowledge sharing and learning. Knowledge can be shared through insights gathered when there is interaction between peers in the community. Professional development, members can have workshops, discussions, and skill enhancement by meeting together and having useful discussions and share ideas. Network and collaboration. Departments or different personnel in a community, right, can have colleagues connecting through complementary skills and expertise. So it's like a group of persons with different skill sets, right? And once they're meeting together, then persons can like brainstorm together in the community for the better good. Innovation and problem solving. They go hand in hand. Communities of practice through dialogue, innovation, problem solving, through brainstorming, as I mentioned earlier, and brainstorming sessions, and this can generate new ideas in the community. Okay. Community building and engagement, camaraderie among leaders, strengthens organization and culture. And this can be done through community building, through meeting at different phases. There's a video. Andrew, you have the video?
No, the video is there.
So can you play the video, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie from the Knowledge Translation team, and I'm going to very briefly talk to you about communities of practice. So the first question you might have is, what is a community of practice? So this is a definition from someone named Etienne Wenger, and he is considered to be the father of communities of practice. So he informs all of the information that I'm sharing with you today. So he defines communities of practice as groups of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do, and they learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. And so there's some important distinctions of a community of practice that make it unique compared to other methods of gathering people together. The first is the domain. So a community of practice is not merely a club of friends or a network of connections between people. It has an identity that's defined by a shared domain of interest, and membership implies a commitment to that domain and therefore a shared competence, so to speak, that distinguishes members from other people. So it's different than, say, a network you may belong to where you don't know the other members. The second piece that makes it unique is the community. So in pursuing their interest in whatever the domain is that's bringing people together in this community of practice, members engage in joint activities, discussions, they help one another, they share information, they build relationships basically that enable them to learn from one another, and they care about their standing with each other as well. And the last piece that makes a community of practice unique is the fact that it's not merely a community of interest. It's not, for example, people who like certain kinds of movies. It's basically a community where the people who are a part of it are practitioners, is what we call them. They develop a shared repertoire of resources. They share experiences, they share stories, they share tools or even co-create tools, and they discuss ways of addressing reoccurring problems in their practice, and they share that experience together. And this takes sustained time and interaction to do. And lastly, what's the benefit of a community of practice? So here are some very top level benefits, and of course there are more. But the first one is peer-to-peer learning, of bringing people together so that they can learn from one another in a space where they feel comfortable sharing their expertise and knowledge with one another. The second is that new relationships are developed. So you're bringing together people that might not otherwise have had the chance to get together and share their knowledge and experiences with one another. The third is innovative problem solving. So in a good community of practice where there's a sense of trust and security, people aren't afraid to be innovative and creative in their problem solving, and you can get some really cool ideas out of a group of people who are connecting as a community of practice. And lastly, there's also the opportunity for collaboration or partnership on projects for people who are in that community of practice together. So that's a whistle-stop tour of what a community of practice is. What are the things that make it different than the other ways that we may organize people, and what some of the benefits are. And I hope that was helpful.
Okay, thank you. So what are some of the benefits of community of practice that would have stand out to you from this video? Anyone? Okay, so some of the benefits, let me repeat some of the benefits. We have peer-to-peer learning through brainstorming and things like that. We have new relationships being developed. We have innovative problem solving and collaboration of partners on projects. Now, Arun Gandhi shares many lessons he learned as a small boy from his grandfather, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Among those lessons were his grandfather's reflection on what caused violence in human life, some of which he mentioned as these 7 deadly sins. Okay. So now we'll just do a bit of discussion on these. So learning to feel responsible for others in our communities of practice is critical for our human connection. Go on, please. So some of these lessons that he learned is wealth without work. Can somebody tell me what this means to them? What they think it means, wealth without work? Well, from my understanding, wealth without work can be, and correct me if you think you have a different perspective on it, but wealth without work can mean, like for some children who are born into wealth, so they didn't have to go through hard labor or long hours of work as some persons would have to do in order to make a living. So they were born into rich families. This is how I understand wealth without work. Pleasure without conscience, anybody? Pleasure without conscience. Okay, McCoyan, you saying something? Okay, if you're speaking, I'm not hearing. So pleasure without conscience is can be an example can be the purchase of a luxury vehicle or luxury property without having any considerations or considering a humanitarian act. That is how I understand pleasure without conscience, right? Knowledge without character. Anybody, how do you look at this? Knowledge without character.
Alicia here. I believe knowledge without character is knowing a lot of beneficial information but not applying it to help it boost your character.
Okay, that's good. I agree with that as well, right? So it can also means that the person doesn't have a strong sense of purpose or direction. So they're very selfish. They can be very selfish, termed as very selfish, right? Commerce without morality. Anyone? So how would you explain commerce without morality? Okay, from my research, commerce without morality refers to economic systems being allowed to operate without moral foundation, right? Science without humanity. When we hear science without humanity, what comes to mind? Is also considered one of the deadly sins, right? So it's advancing in science without fully understanding the deadly consequences on humans' life. Right? So you have persons continuously doing researches, and even with some of the vaccines that we have to take. I mean, it's science, and it's some vaccines we have to take them without really knowing what side effects they can have on us. Right? Rights without principles. This one I really need help with. I know we were born with rights, yes, but how do you understand rights without principles? Can anybody help me there? So I look at this as even though we have rights, some of us are not being responsibly enough to do certain things. All right. Does anybody have any question for me?
Hi, everyone.
Okay. I'll now pass you on to my colleague. Thank you.
They say the sun and a shine for all, but in some people world, it never shine at all.
Hi everyone, I'm Janelle Daniel George. I just put in that song there to have a little to get your attention. I'm doing the final part of this presentation, so I won't be long. I'll be doing the development of community. So I want to ask a question here, but I see that everyone is shy. No one has been answering any questions for the night. But I wanted to know if there are any homeowners here You could show your hands. If you're shy, that's all right. Just think about how you moved into your house the first time you moved in, whether it's a gated community, a housing scheme, any type of homes. Just think about your experience moving into that house while I go along. I can assure you that in the first week of moving in, everybody was happy, everybody was helpful. How long did it take for the true colors to show? Or we say, how long did it take for the mask to fall off? Or how many persons are still in a chaotic phase or choose to stick to themselves after and have their own peace and happiness within their four walls? Let's go on to PEC's 4 stages. This would sound familiar because just as the groups go through forming, storming, norming stage, Scott Peck in 1987 has identified 4 stages of development of developing a true authentic community. So how was the first weekend living in your neighborhood? Just think of that. I'm sure it was perfect, happy, and jolly. Everyone was helpful. Well, this first stage is called the pseudo community stage. In this stage, a group may feel like things are just fine. People seem to be getting along, friendships are courteous, but in reality, it's superficial, underdeveloped level of community. The pseudo community is conflict avoiding, true community is conflict resolving. So everyone is perfect, happy, go lucky here, but in reality, it's fake. The second stage of community building is chaos. During this stage, there is a noise, or we say in Trinidad, the bacchanal start. Different people or fractions asserting their perspective from which to set a community's agenda or determine important processes. Community members, committee members, promote individual agendas. There would be cliques forming in different corners or floors if you live in a building. So this stage can be dangerous because some give up and retreat, right? Um, they give up and retreat and they might move out. But just a little something, thanks to this chaotic stage, I've experienced it personally. And I actually got a fairly brand new house in a gated community because the previous owner couldn't take that chaotic stage and moved out just after a year. This I knew before purchasing, of course, but it didn't faze me. It is important to find meaning in the idea that fighting is better than pretending you're not divided. That's also from Peck. This stage is similar to the forming stage of group development presented in chapter 7 by another group. Peck observes that groups take one of 2 parts out of this chaotic stage, organization or emptiness. Organization leaves the source of fighting untouched by establishing structures and systems to manage and handle differences of opinion. So in my community now, we have like a WhatsApp group and the majority rules when it comes to make a decision. And there are also the point persons in the community where we go to who would resolve problems. The structures may solve immediate problem, but the source of tension and disagreement may fester. Although it is counterintuitive to think of the term emptiness as good, emptiness in Peck's term for the process of community members is emptying themselves of their barriers to true communication. Thus, emptiness becomes a stage in community building. This third stage is realization that many personal feelings, assumptions, ideas, and stereotypes or motives become barriers to truly listening and understanding and being understood. In the fourth stage, true authentic community, which everyone should be striving to reach, conflict may still arise, but there are always ways to be heard. And the community members usually know they cannot reach a consensus or any level of agreement without disagreements because everyone is different to create a truly better decision. Building community is creating a feel of we out of a lot of I's. Many groups never get past the pseudo community stage and find ways to be courteously interactive and get their work done. That may be sufficient for their purpose, but ongoing groups that are doing difficult work would benefit from recognizing 4 stages and working towards authentic community. So this is very familiar to the groups. Communities are not static. They constantly change. New members join the group, external crises cause new levels or types of conflict, and key members who have been instrumental to nurturing the community leave. Community must recognize that they need to attend the cycle of rebuilding a genuine community. So my other question would have been, what do you think are the qualities of a good community member? Now, I think that this always comes up, the quality of a good leader and everything always comes up with every group for their presentation. So this would be similar. Participants who want to be highly engaged in the work of any community need to assess the ways in which they can become effective community leaders. So Gotti Kunst proposes that individual participants practice these 7 community building principles. So the first principle would be being committed. Commitment to others is a prerequisite for community to exist. So I did a little hierarchy of commitment just to explain what true commitment really is. So saying I will not do it, I will influence others to do it, that's not true commitment. Or even saying why should I do it if nobody says to do it, that's complaining. If you say I have to do it and I can do it when I'm told to, that's compliance. But the true commitment is actually saying, I will do it and I would lead others to do it. That's the level of commitment you're looking for. The second one will be mindful. Be mindful. The second slide. Being mindful, we think about what we do and say. Focus on process, not the outcome. Be contemplative and examining your own behavior rather than just judging someone else. Next, we have being unconditionally accepting. So a lot of us have problems with the new LGBTQ, however, community. So he's saying that accepting others as they are and do not try to change them or control them. Minimize expectation, prejudices, suspicion, and mistrust. Be concerned for both yourself and others. Engage in dialogue, whenever possible. Consult others on issues that affect them and be open to their ideas. Fight gracefully. The fifth one will be understanding. Strive to understand others as completely as possible. You see your neighbor being silent or moving a certain way, maybe it's nothing to do with you. It's because of something from their past, or maybe it's just who they are. The sixth one will be ethical. Engage in behavior that is not means to an end, but behavior that is morally right in and of itself. One would be peaceful. Do not be violent or deceitful or breach value promises or be secretive. Strive for internal harmony and harmony in relationships with others, in relation with others. If each participant has the mental model of their organization as a community and practices community building skills, the group will be enriched. Participants will listen more keenly, respect each other, and even when there are disagreements on specific issues, they'll seek resolution of differences and learn more in the process. Now, relational leadership is directly linked with building a community, as Andrew said earlier. Now we have college communities. For hundreds of years, college campuses have been described as communities of scholars or as learning communities. Yet in reality, a sense of true community is not always a shared experience. Hate crimes happen on campus. Incivility can be found in senators to purposes of other organizations, and not all people know or care about each other. The Carnegie Foundation of the Advancement of Teaching in 1990 conducted a major study of what students, faculty would like to change about their campus. All groups agreed that they need a renewed sense of community, not just a return to an older homogeneous model, but a kaleidoscopic community that embraces differences and finds common purpose. The foundation promoted the concept that healthy college communities would be purposeful, open, just, disciplined, caring, and celebrative. Campuses can take purposeful steps to valuing being together in community. CASTAT is a community college that includes multiple communities, like the students, faculties, administrators, staff, alumni. Within those groups, there are even smaller clusters, seniors, graduate students. Each cluster has unique needs and shares community issues. There are communities by departments and by programs of functional units. For example, the Science Department, School of Nursing Sciences, and the Students Activities Office. All of these communities are bound together by the common goal of being a community of people committed to learning and advancing their own education and the education of others. Next slide. Different organizations have different purposes and focus. Higher education communities emphasize such elements as learning, scholarship, academic freedom, and student development. A social organization might emphasize friendship, fun, enriching experiences. A sports team stresses competencies, teamwork, responsibility. Regardless of the special mission and focus of those groups and organizations, the people in them will experience healthy communities if they intentionally practice the discipline of community. Our smaller communities become a fractal of developing global communities. The global community of the future will be, at best, a series of communities that are interdependent, diverse, embracing differences, releasing energy, and building cohesion. Committing to promote and develop community in places you function on campus is a key way of building and supporting the larger campus community. So we have a video here on the next slide.
Post-secondary institutions are increasingly expected to provide students with the experiences and skills they need to succeed in a complex and ever-changing world. This means fostering students who are not just educated, but are resilient, creative, collaborative, and engaged citizens. Health and well-being are essential for student success and learning and have been shown to positively impact these, as well as student satisfaction and retention. In fact, there's research that shows that well-being is one of the most important contributors to the success of individuals, communities, and societies overall. Elementary and secondary schools, hospitals, workplaces, and cities have recognized the value of purposefully creating environments that prioritize well-being. Evidence suggests that they have experienced substantial benefits from this. There is incredible work happening already at our campuses, but there are opportunities to be innovative and strategic in designing healthy campus communities where all students can learn and thrive. It's more than addressing individual students. Let's explore. Students come to university with their own level of resources, and there are a number of services that can enhance these and support students when needed. But no matter what resources a student has, they are also profoundly impacted by the campus community itself. It's the words people speak, policies and decisions that are made, actions that are taken, and the organizational culture and systems that are created. It's the learning environments, student experiences, and connection to the broader community. They all connect. Campuses are complex, but in complex systems, even small changes can have big effects. It's time to broaden our focus and look at how every aspect of our campuses can impact well-being and promote or prevent student success and learning. Everyone has a role to play in designing our campuses. Students, staff, faculty, administrators, governments, and community partners. The momentum is building. The time is now. Let's roll up our sleeves and start designing the healthy campus communities we want. What will yours look like?
All right. So I hope that I'm on my way out of custard, but I hope that those who are now starting would have a healthy campus community. And I hope that the experience is really great in the near future. So we're going to summarize a little bit, framing any group or organization as a community of people working together for shared purposes enhances relational leadership. To flourish, communities require relational leadership. These practices value community as the context in which meaningful change can occur. So think about a particular community of which you have been a member and describe a community of which you are an active member. Try to relate this community to the 4 stages of the community development outlined by Peck. Did you experience each stage? What was each one like? That's something you can think of. And that's the end of our presentation. Does anyone have any questions? I guess not. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no questions, I'll pause the recording now.